Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. And we love talking to innovators of all kinds on this podcast within the tech ecosystem. And today we're going to be zeroing in on AI and different specific nuances around AI, especially AI security. So you're going to be wanting to listen carefully if AI has been on your agenda, if it's been something that's high on priority for your organization, then you're going to want to listen in today because we're going to be talking about all things AI and AI security and just how it's being used in enterprises on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. If you enjoy this conversation, go and check out all of the other stuff we've been doing for the past few years now, related topics to this. So go and check out all of the previous episodes as well. And with that, I'd like to welcome our guest for today. We have with us Trevor Welsh, who's the VP product at Witness AI. And witness.ai is their website. You can go and check them out. And they are into all things AI security for enterprises. And that's going to be our topic of conversation for today as well, just to get to know their take on AI as it's being used in the enterprise, and specifically around security. What are some of the issues and challenges, and how can enterprises really prepare for this era of AI that's upon us right now? So very timely conversation, very interesting topic, and let's get started. Trevor, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for tuning. Thanks for joining us this episode, and looking forward to our conversation on AI.
Dwayne, thanks so much for having me. Absolutely thrilled to be here.
All right. Before we get started talking about all things AI, I just wanted to get to know a bit about you, Trevor, and just your background, what you've been up to, and just your journey up to Witness AI.
Yeah, totally. It's a pretty long and sordid tale. I guess it's been about 20 years, maybe more than 20 years in cybersecurity, but starting out way back in three-letter agencies and that type of thing. And then, from there, I worked at some really, really neat companies. So I'm privileged to have worked at companies like ArcSight and Splunk and Fortinet, Google. Really, really early at Google, we got to go and start building out Chronicle, which was kind of the big moonshot project. And that became SecOps today. And now I lead product here at Witness AI, and it's been pretty amazing. Sort of a cybersecurity guy who started building a while back.
All right, all right. And how long has it been now with Witness AI?
Yeah, so I joined Witness AI in the beta phase. So the company had kind of already thought things through and everything else, and they were looking for a product leader to take that ahead. So I've been with Witness AI since August of last year. So the better part of a year. It's pretty exciting.
All right. Yeah, exciting times. So I want to dive right into talking about one of the key terms of our conversation today, which is agentic AI. And that's a term that it's been around. You look at LinkedIn, it's hard to, get through a LinkedIn feed without seeing the phrase agentic AI. Well, depending on what kind of LinkedIn network you have and how you train the algorithms. But at least for me, I've been seeing agentic AI a lot recently. And I'm quite excited to actually get to know more about agentic AI, what it is, and why it matters. So would you mind kind of giving us a brief definition of what is agentic AI, how it's being used, and then we move to talk about securing them and all of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So in a lot of ways, so agentic AI is kind of an evolution of the AI that a lot of us are familiar with, right? So, my daughter will use ChatGPT to go and ask questions, and these that what we call those standard AI things, the AI applications, they tend to be reactive. This means that you go out to them intentionally, you ask them a question intentionally, they provide you with a response completion, and then you consume that data and maybe ask follow-on questions, et cetera. They're generally going to be kind of relatively stateless. They respond to prompts. And agentic AI works quite a bit differently. So you can think of agentic AI as being more task-based. So imagine for a moment something like AutoGPT, where I can go and say something like this: hey, I want to go and design a car. Um, what material should I concern myself with to design a car? Where would I get those from? And an agentic AI, right? Or, basically you can sort of have a master agent. It can go, oh, he's trying to make a car. Well, cars are comprised of steel and aluminum and various alloys, certain polymers and stuff like that. So therefore, like, I'm going to go and figure all this out. And it might even ask me questions. Then what it does is it jobs out each of these tasks to specialist models, right? That's the agentic part. So, hey, I can go and reach out to a model that specializes in polymers, and I can go and say, here are the specifications I'm looking for. I'm attempting to make an automobile. This is the strength I need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that concept is really, really important. So you can think of it as being more purpose-built, more goal-driven. It initiates actions. Agentic AI can also monitor things. So imagine for a moment that it's sitting there waiting for a thing to happen, maybe another kind of model to reach out to it to say, hey, I'm trying to go and create steel alloys. Like, what steel alloys do you have in this price bracket that meet these specifications? And oh, yep, here you go. I understand what you're asking. I can send back. So a lot of that stuff is going to be governed by kind of the concepts of agentic. And then you also get into, a variety of other pieces as well, and kind of like the core languages like MCP and stuff like that and protocols.
All right, interesting. So you're saying it's rather than just a single model, there are multiple models working in the background, and the nature is more complex. And you're probably saying that it's more automated and not as waiting, it doesn't wait for you to initiate. It's more responsive, or it's more independent. Is it
Yes.
fair? Are those fair ways to describe it?
I think that's great. I think it's a really good way to describe it. So if you think of it as being multi-step, if you think of it as being very, it's initiating actions itself, it's coordinating other AIs in order to go and achieve a goal that it understands, and that it's decomposed into like multiple pieces of a goal. If you actually use ChatGPT and you use the research function, you can actually see sort of an agentic-like behavior happening, right? Like, it'll deconstruct what you're trying to do, and it starts giving its thought process. It starts querying
Yeah.
other parts. Yeah, so that's kind of leaning into that a little bit, as kind of like an agentic front end.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So, how far out is agentic AI in terms of adoption as you look at it today? Because we're still coming to terms with, how do we use simple, chat-based commands and AI? How do we integrate that into our day-to-day workflows? This seems like a step ahead from there. So, where are we in terms of adoption?
It's a good question. So I think broadly in the public consciousness, if you were to go and speak to regular Americans or even people all over the world and say, hey, are you familiar with AI? A lot of people would think of either ChatGPT, or they'd think of like some local permutation of some sort of Gen AI. I think that's pretty common. It's in the public consciousness. I think among the public, if I went to my daughter and I went to my friends and said agentic AI, they'd go, oh, I kind of broadly know agentic means agent based, but like, I don't know what that means. I think if you went to CISOs, so let's talk about somebody a little bit different, a CISO, and said agentic AI, what you'd hear is something like this. Hey, my local hyperscaler rep and I had this really good conversation about agents and co-pilots and kind of how they deconstruct tasks. Like, it's really interesting. Different side though. Now you get to ML ops teams. So picture a Fortune 500 ML ops team where you talk about like a metal supplier. Agentic AI, very important to them. So these folks are thinking about it a lot. So similar to like things like MCP and like the various protocols governing kind of like call AI to AI interactions, they're thinking about it a lot. They're doing it a lot. So I think a good bifurcation maybe to this point, right, is in this way, the public, regular people sort of led business with regular Gen AI like ChatGPT. But business and enterprise is kind of leading the public with agent based. And I think that what will end up happening is they kind of converge into something more broadly, like something analogous to agentic, but you won't really realize it is if you're in the public.
Interesting. Yeah, those are some good examples. I think, yeah, for this podcast, right, our audience tends to be probably kind of like the CISO example that you gave, and probably like probably a lot of those kind of roles and platform engineering, DevOps teams, those kind of things. So managing infrastructure. And I think it is a mixed crowd, because even there, I'd say, the some that are more uh, open and more wanting to adopt newer technologies and ideas, and some that are probably a little more slower at it and a little more waiting and watching.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a mixed crowd here. But These are some
Yeah.
of the, I think, like the thing you mentioned about running hyperscalers, running applications on hyperscalers and just doing them efficiently. Those are some things that, are on the mind of the audience that listen to these episodes. Um,
Yeah.
so I was wondering if you could give us some of the examples of, how agentic AI is being used in enterprises. You kind of hinted at it in your previous response, but if you could give us a little more detail and a few more examples to kind of drive this home about agentic AI.
Yeah. It's a great point. So, broadly, I think that there are a few things that are occurring. So today, there's a very interesting thing. So one is there are new AI use cases cropping up daily, right? People are coming up with really cool uses of AI. I mean, certainly in the cybersecurity space. Gosh, I walked the halls at RSA last week, and it felt like every company had some kind of AI story. I think that what's kind of happening is there's this concept of, for example, agentic AI being very task-based. In other words, I can picture, for example, let's think really, really practical, and let's think very cybersecurity oriented for a second. Well, suppose that I said something like this to you. Hey, we're going to do autonomous SOC, and Twain, we can go and have an autonomous AI agent, and what it'll do is whenever you get an intrusion alert or an IDS alert, it'll go and it knows a whole bunch of stuff. It'll monitor for these intrusion alerts. It'll then triage them, make sense of them, gather all the firewall logs, and do all the spreadsheet kung fu you typically do, and then it'll do an analysis, see if it's above 50%, and if it is, it gets escalated. If it's not, it basically just goes and informs you at the end of the day that, hey, I de-escalated 300 things for you. I think that broadly, lots of companies are doing things like that, meaning that, like, are they using AI in ways like that? Yeah. Similarly, let's think broader. Salesforce, right? Like Einstein and kind of other various tools. There are now AI agents that will go and monitor for certain states to occur within Salesforce. And when they do, they run all kinds of complex workflows and enrichments and leverage models and RAGs and stuff like that. So I think that, like, from an enterprise perspective, most of them are doing stuff like this today. But I think that the way they see it is they see it a little bit more like they're not worried about AI. They're worried about the outcome. If the outcome is just, hey, the SIM that I'm used to turns out that we're churning through cases quicker, and therefore my SOC team is more efficient because that update they did with the AI thing. Great. If I'm a CISO, that's all I want to know. Hey, all I know is I did an update and apparently the team's 25% faster. Great. It's AI, whatever that does. I think people are
Mhm.
very, very outcome focused in enterprise. I think they're less focused on the technology. They're not sitting there going, I need Agentic to do something. I think rather vendors are coming up with them, and vendors they trust and saying, I'm doing this thing. It's pretty awesome. I can turn this on for you. You can do a check and you can check it out, but it's an outcome focus. Companies that are doing AI for AI's sake are probably having a harder time getting to value and stuff like that, is my feeling. Um,
Mhm.
I do think from an agent perspective, the other thing we see is, let's talk about airlines for a moment. Classic example. Hey, do I have the ability to go in and when I call into Delta, I fly Delta a lot, but when I call into Delta, wouldn't it be interesting if there was like a really, really convincing AI that could service 100,000 customers simultaneously, like when there's a grounding or something like that? And it could look things up. It understands my profile. It's all enriched. It can go into an AI booking agent and go and get detail there. It goes out to another model to go and understand my preferences and what might make me happy. It goes to another model to look at my history, and it bridges all that together seamlessly into that conversation to go and make me not wait on hold. Yeah, like stuff like that's happening today, and that's agentic AI in a nutshell.
All right. Wow, really interesting. What do you find with prospects that come to you and are interested in Witness AI? Are these prospects that have already, heard, read up, discussed the challenges? They kind of know the solution they need, and they come to you and they're like, we need this. This is exactly what we want. Can you do this for us? Or are they more like, we've kind of heard about this. We kind of have a broad idea, but we don't know. We've got these different issues. Can you tell us if you can solve this for us? What do you see more of?
It's a good question. I think that really broadly it would bifurcate into two. I'll call it, yeah, two things. Bifurcation, two things. So thing one is you've got a cybersecurity team that, from a business perspective, the business has decided. Like, remember, I talked about that airline booking agent. The business has decided we want an airline booking agent because our hold times for our platinum level people are too long. And we did some research. It turns out that if we use voice-based kind of like, voice-based AI, like that makes our platinum members happier, and the hold time goes from 15 minutes down to 0. And then what happens is this. All right, ML Ops, the machine learning team, built a thing. They drop it in Twain's lap as the person that runs security, and they go, all right, we want to deploy this. Can you secure it? And the answer you're going to get back is like, I mean, I didn't even write the thing. Like, I need to secure a thing I don't really understand. Hey, Witness AI, can you help me? I heard your security company, or I heard from somebody I trust, or I read it. We're on Gartner, for example. There's Magic Quadrants and stuff like that. Hey, I read at Gartner that I should talk to Witness AI because I now have this problem that's been dropped in my lap, and a business problem became a security problem. That's one thing. Second thing you see is really, really fascinating, which is the hyperscalers out there. So let's say Microsoft is out there. They're a very well-connected, smart company. They go and meet you, Twain, the CISO, and they say, hey, we can do all this Copilot stuff. It's magical and amazing. And you check it out and you're like, oh my God, this really is magical and amazing. Like I asked this thing and just, boom, I got data. Like, wow, it works really, really well. And then invariably, right, you start reading about challenges with copilots and configuring them. And then you reminded like, oh man, whenever I log into the Azure interface, it's really complex. I'm not totally sure. You know what? Hold on a second. And then you literally reach out to one of your directs and go, hey, man, can you see if you can see my email between me and the CEO? And your direct goes, oh, yeah, this one. And you go, all right, I've configured this wrong. I need help. So I want the superpower. I want the magic wand, but I can't be turning people into cats all the time. So that's kind of the other thing that happens. So again, both of them start as a draw to doing something awesome that's great for the business. And then both of them result in the reality of like, I think I need help. It's less so out pounding marketing pavement and saying it's a problem so much as it is the business is going, I want to do this. And then a CISO is going, I've realized I need help.
Oh, yeah, some great examples there, really driving the point home. Brings me to this, you're talking about Copilot, brings me to this next term that I would like to get into, shadow AI. An evolution of the term shadow IT, and kind of have a clue of what it is, but definitely want you to define it for us and talk in more detail. But I was talking to one of the developers recently who works in a company, and he was just commenting that that as an organization they use Copilot and they're encouraged to use Copilot, but that's not his favorite. He uses another developer tool that is similar to Copilot that he likes. And so kind of, I think it's kind of an example of this idea at work. So can you flesh it out for us and tell us what is shadow AI and why it's important and what are some of the risks?
Yeah. So, man, I think that your point about sort of relating shadow IT and shadow AI is of course spot on. Fundamentally, right? Like shadow sounds like really bad and nefarious, and that's I don't know. Here's what I'll go and put out. I'll put out this in the world. Shadow isn't always bad. It just means like it's ungoverned or whatever it is. Look, your employees, even in the shadow IT world, are trying to get their jobs done, right? Usually they're not doing something nefarious. They're not trying to be sneaky necessarily. They're sitting in there and go, hey, I don't even know. I want to use Napkin AI to go and make some diagrams for me. I'm a regular guy in marketing. I don't even know who to ask to get that enabled for me. But I also have this thing due Monday, and it's already Tuesday. That to me is real life. And so what is shadow AI? Shadow AI fundamentally is just it's ungoverned AI, right? It's AI where I don't have a contract. IT and IS is necessarily probably not aware of it, or it's being used in a way that they're unaware of it. Let me give you an example, right? Microsoft Copilot, there's kind of two parts of Copilot, right? There's Copilot Enterprise, there's Copilot Personal. One of them can search SharePoint and do all those other things. The other one goes and it kind of can query general models and stuff like that. By the way, there's also Copilot in Windows 11. So literally in the Windows 11 operating system, there's a Copilot. And so, invariably people are just trying to do their jobs. But, you could sit in there and go, hey, everybody, you can use ChatGPT, but you need to use ChatGPT Enterprise. And then somebody gets confused, doesn't log in, and they're just in regular ChatGPT and they think they're doing the right thing. And they're really not. They're actually querying the general model and they could be training a competitor. That's real life. So, anyways, where we go with this, right, is that fundamentally, um, you know, it ends up kind of being like a data protection problem, not data loss protection, it's data protection. So you get this concept of like, do I know where my data is going? Do I know who's querying what? Do I have an awareness that Twain's team are all leveraging GitHub Copilot when we're supposed to be using Claude, right? Like maybe like we're an Anthropic customer and we actually route all engineering queries to Claude, et cetera. That concept of cataloging is really hard. The thing that makes it extra hard, by the way, is something I alluded to, which is it's not just a browser problem, right? It's not just, you can't just throw in a browser agent or use an enterprise browser. Like that doesn't do anything for Windows 11 Copilot that's in your operating system. Doesn't do anything for thick clients. It doesn't do anything for a lot of these that in real life are there and really, really common in enterprise. So I think that kind of idea of network-based kind of detection ends up becoming critical, which is something we leaned into a while ago, and it's a really hard problem to solve. But it does solve those things and effectively at least give the CISO and the team the ability to go and say, hey, do we want to de-shadow the AI? The current shadow AI, can I give it a flashlight and now it's okay? If I'm aware of it, now I can just apply guardrails and maybe now it's okay. But that's kind of the key thing.
All right, all right. An interesting term there, network-based observability, quite interesting. So I get that what you're saying is that, we can't rely on like, having to install an agent manually to monitor each service. And we can't have plugins, so it needs to be something that's plugged into the network and watches traffic. Tell us a bit more about this. How does this work? What's the technology behind Witness AI's approach?
Mhm.
We're kind of getting into just the solution. We kind of discussed, the challenges and the background, kind of getting into the solution and a bit of Witness's approach. So give us
Mhm.
a bit more about what you mentioned just now, talking about network-based observability.
Yeah. So I think that it's really, really important to understand what real life is like, right? So whenever you're making any kind of product, understanding real life is important. And, I'll give an example. Like there's a lot of companies out there, you could sit in there and go, we did all this stuff for Windows. And then you find out that like, gosh, like 30% of my customer base is using Macs. Like, like that's a
Mhm.
problem. Or you make all kinds of stuff for iPhone and it turns out that your customer base happen to be Android folks. And there's a lot of them. Um, all I'm saying is that, conceptually you need to know your audience. And in order, you can't protect that which you cannot see. So if you're sitting in there and going, hey, Microsoft just end of lifed Windows 10, and they're giving us an amazing deal on Windows 11 Copilot, and we can get an enterprise version, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want to turn that on. But then simultaneously, I also have no visibility into it at all. It's going to be in an encrypted protocol. It's not in my browser. Twain solving problems just by clicking on his taskbar and asking questions and uploading documents and everything else. Um, it's a pretty big blind spot. So one of the things that Witness AI did that was really interesting, and this is before my time, it was a really, really smart decision made by our CTO and founders, is hey, what if we could go in and tie into SASEs, tie into proxies, tie into all these things that necessarily are like a man in the middle or a bump on the road, and select the right data. By the way, that's really, really hard. And do deep packet inspection, also really, really hard. And then on top of that, be able to go and deconstruct the entire thing such that, imagine for a moment that I can literally see the conversation between Windows 11 Copilot in the operating system and Microsoft's backend models and AI servers. Like I can literally see the whole thing because I'm in the control path, rather I'm in the data path. So if I can do that, then I can also put things in. So now imagine for a moment that, hey, Trevor makes a mistake and he like pastes in, he pastes in some stuff for summarization. It contains a whole bunch of cardholder data. And then Witness AI would actually have the ability, because of existing in that network layer, to say, hey, Trevor, you can't upload stuff. You're going to throw us out of PCI DSS compliance. And maybe we literally warn the user and say, don't do stuff like this inside of Windows 11. Or maybe we redact it automatically, right? Get the response back and reconstitute it. That's kind of the privileged place in which we work. But in addition, by the way, it works for ChatGPT, it works for, it works for Claude, it works for Gemini, it works for all this other stuff. But it's kind of the harder way to do it, but it's much more complete.
Wow, really interesting. Yeah, that's quite an interesting way to do it. It makes me think though. if you can have that much visibility, then the other side of it is the question of encryption and just privacy and confidentiality of that data and all of that.
Yeah.
That needs to be assured as well. Any comment on that front?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. So, one of the things that we saw are the customers that we work with are typically some of the biggest companies in the world, and we're fortunate they've selected us and we get to work closely with them. And I think all of them, are, some have public figures working there, others have offices and even major branches in various parts of the world that might have fairly tight privacy controls like that. Some states, by the way, including California, have things like Cal Privacy that actually are modeled in the terms of GDPR and stuff like that you'd see over in Europe. That said, so two things. One, we have a concept called executive privacy mode within Witness AI. And what it enables you to do, and by the way, everybody can be an executive. What it enables you to do is literally just go and select a group and say, hey, the conversational data for whoever this group is, it's just not going to be visible in the product to anybody but the super admin, which is probably the CISO themselves. Save for that, nobody else sees conversational data. That's one thing we can do. Second thing we can do, which is probably a little bit more wonkish and technical, is we do support things like bring your own key. So if you want to go and you want to literally, and by the way, your witness instance is fully separate, right? It's a distinct instance. And you want to leverage bring your own key and it does encryption that you control the keys and you own the keys. We support that fully as well. In both cases, though, right, you can kind of go and meet the letter of the law with regards to privacy. And quite frankly, people deserve privacy. I'm a really big proponent for it. I want to enable people to do amazing stuff. I don't want to creep them out and stuff like that. But I need to make sure that we've got the right data to make the right decisions without necessarily, making people feel weird and violating their privacy.
All right. Sounds great. I'm really curious to see just the product itself or kind of the dashboard of Witness. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Mhm.
But before we get to that, I was just wondering if you can give us the elevator pitch for Witness AI. You've already touched on the key ideas behind it and the approach. Give us the elevator pitch, and then maybe we could get to the walkthrough you have for us.
Yeah. So I think there's probably two things. One, um, Witness AI is uniquely positioned to do two things for you. One, Witness AI has the ability to go and tie into your existing investments, and to basically add an AI superpower for your existing investments. So that means be able to see, and apply guardrails to all the prompts, all the responses, and to enable you to go and literally go and have amazing AI kind of usage and to enable your employees. The next thing, of course, is as you grow with AI, and you want to do things like create your own models or your own chatbots. Witness AI also, of course, does model protection and model identity protection to not only make sure that people aren't hacking your model, but also that the model's responses are congruent with what you want the model to do. Which, by the way, is absolutely huge if you're a CISO, right? If you think about it, if you're not the person making the model, that ability to go in and help make sure that the model's saying the right stuff is absolutely huge. The final thing that I would put out there that's really, really unique with Witness AI is we're intention based. So understand that people can go and ask questions in any way, shape, or form. What does Witness AI do that's unique? We actually go and we model every single prompt that comes through, and we can go and tell you, hey, Trevor's trying to go and obtain legal information, or Trevor's trying to go and generate a diagram. So that concept means that all of our policies are also intention based. So you can kind of imagine that I can do stuff like, hey, this model only talks about the blue cars that we sell, or hey, whenever we go and we see somebody trying to go and ask for HR related information, we're going to route them automatically to sort of an internal model. That intention basis is absolutely huge for making policy, because otherwise you're in that old school 1995 world of regexes and stuff like that. And that's a unique part of Witness AI.
All right. All right. Really neat. Wow. So really curious to see what you have prepared for us just as a walkthrough. This is a video podcast as well. So
Yes.
yeah, would love to see Witness AI in action or just see how it looks.
Yeah. I'm going to do a very, very high level little 2 minute show and tell. I'm not gonna do the full demo
Yeah.
scenario and stuff like that, but let me go and do the very high level show and tell that I think is pertinent.
All
So,
right.
are you able to see stuff?
Yes. We
Cool.
see some spider diagrams. Yeah. All right.
Yes. So a few things. So understand that, Witness AI is actually going and calculating, hey, how many active AI applications do you have? How many users are actively using AI right now? What are your top apps? All of this type of stuff. You'll also see the intentions. People saying, I want to invest in stocks, or I want to identify these numbers, or I want to go and draft contracts. So this gets us into a really interesting world. So if we go into conversations, conversations is kind of part of our superpower. So notice that, for example, you'll see what kind of credit card number is this? Latest intention, identify a card number type. Or, hey, summarize our executive compensation. Oh man, summarize compensation details. So what does that actually look like? Well, we can go in and notice that Witness AI, I can go and tell you that this person happened to be using Copilot Personal. Notice we can see, please summarize our executive compensation. And notice that it actually went in and Copilot Personal said, like, great, how do we help you? Do you need a specific data set, et cetera, et cetera? Now we can go in and click Analyze Risk. And under Analyze Risk, we can now see the policy here. We can see the conversation. And then we see this topic, subtopic, and intention. So we're actually going and calculating all of this in real time. So that's really interesting. And you can see that, yes, you're getting data. I understand what you're doing. But like, how would I actually go about and see how to go and make my own stuff? Like, how did you even do that? And how does that work in real life? So I think one of the most powerful things that you can do, and I'm going to go and do something that's usually a no-no, but if we go in here and we actually go and look directly at a policy, right? One of the things that I can do is I can name a policy and do all the things you'd expect. I can also go and assign the policy. I can assign the policy to users. I can assign it to groups. I can assign it to certain providers. Our providers could be, OpenAI or Google or Microsoft, or maybe it could be, for example, a list. It could be our sanction providers. So, companies that we've got a contract with, which gets into the shadow AI concept we spoke about earlier, sanctioned applications, public models. So this idea of being able to go and say how the guardrails get applied is absolutely huge. But how do the guardrails themselves work? So I want to go and touch on that concept of intention and behavior because I think it's absolutely huge. So you'll notice here that I have the ability to go and add a behavior. Now, when I add a behavior, this is kind of the superpower that I think is really amazing. So notice that we go and ship with a whole bunch of different behaviors. And these are things that we can go in here and say, hey, notice there's a whole bunch of aviation safety stuff, relationship advice. We can just go and say travel planning. Whenever somebody goes and they ask about travel planning, we want to go and maybe we want to block that and give them a message. But we could do something even more powerful than that. So suppose that we're a travel company. So when I worked at Google, we actually had like an internal travel app. Wouldn't it be neat if instead of them talking to ChatGPT, I could just route them into our own internal travel model? Great. I can go and say, I want to route this to where, at which time, maybe we've got this Grok internal model. I click here. And now any single time that we see anything to do with travel planning, we route that request, even if they're inside ChatGPT, even if they're inside Gemini, even if they're inside Copilot, we seamlessly route that prompt into our internal Grok model for travel. And then we go and respond from that model instead. These are the types of things that you can do when you have that network level integration, where you're not just going and forwarding somebody within their browser somewhere. So things like this are absolutely powerful. And then from there, you might want to ask like, well, is this working in real life? So we did some pretty awesome analytics. And one of the things that we leaned into was we leaned into the idea of being able to go and track ROI. And part of ROI is going to be able to block connection, things like this. But the other part of ROI is, what if I could route you to like a less expensive model that's cheaper per token? Maybe you don't need ChatGPT 4.0. Maybe what you need is you just need, like a lower version of ChatGPT, or maybe you can use a less expensive internal model, or maybe you can use Grok, or maybe Mistral or something like that. But this idea of being able to go and have direct savings is absolutely huge. So these are all kind of parts of the types of things that we do. And like I said, I'm touching on very, very high level stuff, but the intention-based concept changes everything. You're no longer in the world of regex. You can literally use just total human, just sort of regular speech, which by the way is also multilingual, but total human speech just to say, hey, whenever this thing happens in plain English, like block it, route it, whatever it is. I don't even want to think about the types of things as Trevor's writing them because we're a big company. That concept of modeled intention is absolutely a superpower. So hopefully it helps give kind of like the high level. But by the way, directly pertinent to Agentic as well, right? Because keep in mind, agentic is literally just that model to model, agent to agent based conversation. If you can tune that and make sure that the right data is going out in the right way, absolutely huge, because you can't exactly predict what they're actually going to say and how they say it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that was a fantastic little walkthrough you gave us there in just a short span of time. Just a lot of examples. I just love, I think the sense of visibility and control that it gives to the CISOs and people like who are kind of the ones who own security, the ones who are responsible for how these AI models are being used in their organizations. I think it's just a game changer in terms of how much visibility and control it brings. So, and like you said, very usable as well. It just it looked very understandable, like you said, in regular language. So really great job there with putting that together. It's just extremely well put together.
I'd say.
I saw some really interesting phrases when I was looking through your website, and I think your demo and even your conversation, your responses before this kind of explained them. I was going to ask you about what is real-time prompt redirection and
Hmm.
organizational behavior analysis, some of these terms that I was like curious to know more about. But I
Hmm.
think you kind of touched on this. If there's anything more you'd like to add to these terms to explain them some more, feel free to, or we could talk about
Yeah.
one of the last few questions that we have. Anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I appreciate you. We've listened really, really carefully to our customers in the market as we're building. So we try to make something that like works in real life really, really well. Two things I would go and add. So I touched on kind of the concept of intention because it's gigantic. You mentioned things like organizational behavior. Organizational behavior is really fascinating because what it enables us to do is to actually go and correlate AI use over time for a user, and to be able to go and understand like, hey, that user or that employee might be leaving the business. Hey, I want to update my resume, or I think I want to go, like, or hey, how do I negotiate a new salary? But it's not just on a prompt, right? It's looking for a pattern behavior over time. And why is that a superpower? Well, in real life, I remember I've built out SIMs and XDRs, over time. Understanding if employees might leave is pretty important from a security perspective. And understand you're not trying to sit there and try to spy on people. You're just kind of going like, okay, like I need to make sure that people aren't taking documents and stuff because I've got a legal responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen. And now I need to look closer. So you're actually saving people a lot of time. The other thing that I would go and point out, right, is within Witness AI, another thing that we did that was, I think it was like a fairly brilliant thing, right? Really kind of came down to the idea of like, not only did we do this kind of policy thing, but we also did this cataloging concept. And it means that ability to go and do hey, show me exactly what's in my environment, who's using what does that look like, what's active, all of that type of stuff is to me just absolutely gigantic. And we support like one-click blocking. So whenever we had that for over DeepSeek, I guess a handful of months ago, Witness AI customers were just like, oh, cool. Yeah, we actually have block there. Click block. Boom. DeepSeek, no longer a problem in my world. So literally you see thousands of sites and you can just block them on command. It takes 2 seconds. It's a pretty awesome thing. It's like again, it's the AI superpower.
Yeah, some great examples there. As we wind down, I just wanted to ask your final thoughts and just as you look ahead, there's so much happening, there's so much we discussed, there's so much that we could discuss even more. But what do you have your mind on? What are you reading about? What do you see on the horizon as you look ahead the next year or so in this space? What's interesting?
Yeah. The space, I mean, it's cliche to say the space is moving fast. It's moving terrifically fast. And what I would say is that there's probably two worlds. And I know I'm back to two, this the product guy thing. There's really two worlds that I see that both are just absolutely critical to get right. One of them is the engineering side of agentic, MCP, building models. And a good example is this. I remember, I think it was last year, there was a big bank in the United States that said, hey, we've built thousands of models already. They announced it publicly. And I looked at that and I was like, the first thing I thought of was, oh man, like, what training data did you use? Did you use like your customer data as training data? And if so, like, do you know you didn't? Like, what if you go and you put like the Welsh model out there out in the world, and then all of a sudden people can query for like my details and stuff like that? Just to be clear, these people know what they're doing, but I'm giving an example of like this engineering side is really important. So, hey, can we go and scan a Git and can we go and figure out or repos and figure out what are our models? How are they training them? Who's working on them? What do those look like? How are they deployed? There's that entire world of that plus training data bias, et cetera. But then there's this whole other world, which is like for a CISO, you know, all right, hey, I'm now aware that in my company there's pick a number, 133 different AI applications enabled. Um, how do I figure out which ones I should actually let be enabled? Or do I enable all of them and then I just apply guardrails such that I know my data is not going out and people can use them safely? Like, can I be the CISO of yes in this case to make people really happy without putting the business at risk? And how do I do that? How do I assure that I'm doing the right thing? So I think that there's this world in which you need like an onboarding process where I can go and say, hey, it turns out people are using Taylor AI and it's really awesome. And I can see that it's in line with kind of my overall security standards and my compliance and regulation standards. Yeah, great. I'm good with my marketing team using Taylor.ai. That's great. Um, I think that those are the two things I see. So it's really like leaning into the world of like agentic MCP and engineering, and this other world, which is like, how do I onboard the existing stuff in a meaningful way and then kind of measure it over time, make sure people are using licenses and just all the other stuff around it. But it's like making sure the stuff's congruent with my existing security policies.
All right. Wow. Really fascinating. And I think, the work that you guys are doing at Witness AI is really enabling organizations to step into that world of AI with more boldness and to be able to encourage that innovation that's happening rather than stay back and, give in to fears and give in to, what ifs and, just wonder. But, it really gives a lot more confidence. And I think one of the favorite things I liked of what you said in all of your responses just now was that little thing you said about that you see that organizations that are doing AI for AI's sake, you see that they aren't the ones that are really, getting the most out of it, but the ones that have real problems to solve, and they look to use AI to solve those problems, that they are the ones that are really, making progress. I really found that quite insightful. So as we wind on, any last thoughts that you'd like to share and relate in relation to this, or anything at all to talk about how our listeners or viewers could go and check out what Witness AI can do for them?
Yeah. So probably two things. One, I had a conversation with an early customer of Witness AI, and this is a CISO I respect tremendously. And what they said to me was this: I'm less worried about AI as much as I'm worried about my competitors leveraging it to be faster than me. So, like, my bigger
Mm.
concern is my competitors, just like you said, my competitors that will be outcome focused with AI will accelerate and iterate and be faster than me and necessarily scoop me to market. I'm more worried about that than I am about bad AI stuff. And that's kind of I think that was one of the things that Witness was able to kind of get that person kind of over the edge that way, right? Where they sat there and go, I want to be the CISO of yes, at least as it pertains to accelerating my business. How do I do that in a sane way? Um, that said, we're happy to go and do things like POCs and demos. And, if you want to have conversation with our customers, we would love for you to do so. Reach out, witness.ai. I'm Trevor as well. So hi, I lead product. So you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn and everywhere else. But we would absolutely love to go and have conversations with people and really show them how they can and really kind of enable the magic of AI out in the world.
Right. Awesome. That was a wonderful conversation. Before we end though, Trevor, just a question to get to know you a bit. I want to ask, what would be your alternate career path if not for your job in tech?
Okay. I did electrical engineering in school. And so one of my geeky hobbies is I really like audio amplifiers and all kinds of other various geeky pursuits with like audio. I would probably be eking out a very, very small living, probably designing audio amplifiers and stuff. And I would probably get way too wrapped in the aesthetics of it, making them beautiful and spending too much money and not having a very profitable company. But I'd probably have a lot of fun.
All right. Oh man, I love that space too. Would you mind telling me one audiophile equipment or some speaker or amp that you prize the most that you have?
Ooh, all right. All right. I'll go a little. This will be a deep take. So I'm really I love headphones a great deal. I have for a long time. It probably goes back to being in college and having to be quiet and not be able to have big systems.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I really got into was there's a guy named Kevin Gilmore, and Kevin Gilmore is actually like an electrical engineer and professor. And the long and the short of it is that there was a company over in Japan called Stax, STAX, and Stax designed electrostatic headphones and headphone amplifiers. And what was neat about them is they operated at ultra high voltage and they move really, really quick and they sound amazing and airy and everything else. Anyways, to answer your question really directly, Kevin Gilmore worked with the Stax company to get like these designs from back in, I want to say the 90s with this ultra uber amplifier they made. And I mean, it was like their cost is no object, build the absolute positive, physically best thing we can. He got a hold of the spec, he updated it for modern equipment, and I ended up getting one. And it is like absolutely sublime. Of course, I think it pulls like 1800 watts out of the wall for a headphone amplifier. Yeah, it's not efficient, but it sounds amazing.
Wow, that's quite a story.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's wonkish, I know.
All right. Wow. It was a pleasure chatting with you today, Trevor. Thanks for joining in. And we hope you'll come back again for a part two, maybe sometime early next year or something, to tell us what you've been building at Witness.
Twine, it would be an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. To all of our listeners and viewers, thank you also for joining us for this conversation. We hope you really enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.